One of the best things about making this podcast is that I get to meet some of my absolute favorite artists and musicians of all time. Not only that, I also get to see what they're up to now. So what if I told you that I got to catch up with one of the best musicians of my generation, and not only that, he's going to actually be curating museum tours now? Okay. It's not as if he's an actual museum curator, but he will be doing some guest museum tours at the Punk Rock Museum coming in February. It's not a full-time gig or anything, but it's a pretty cool thing that you can do if you want to catch up with this legendary artist in Las Vegas. And if you somehow clicked on this episode and don't know who I'm talking about yet, well, it's going to be Chris DeMakes from Less Than Jake, one of my absolute favorite bands of all time. Make sure to watch this entire episode to see what he's up to right now. Hello and welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. Today I get the absolute privilege of speaking with one of the most prolific and influential ska punk musicians of all time. And I've been personally a fan of his and the band since the first time I heard Johnny Quest Thinks We're Sellouts back in, I think it was like 1996 or so. I even poorly covered the song in my high school punk band. This man has been a professional musician for almost 40 years, and I'm not saying that to make him feel old. He is just that good. Chris DeMakes is a true legend in ska punk music, having sold out several tours, sold over 1 million albums with hundreds of millions of streams overall, and is now a top-tier podcaster himself, where he interviews fellow musicians about what makes them tick. Chris will also be hanging out here in Las Vegas, where I live, from February 13th through the 15th to once again be offering guided tours at the Punk Rock Museum, which is actually the absolute best way to experience all that the museum has to offer. The link to the tickets are in the show notes below this episode, and if you're in Las Vegas, make sure to come hang out with Chris while he is there. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much. It's great to meet you, and thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Wow, you gave me quite an impressive list of accolades there. I appreciate it.
You're not just some guy in a studio. You're the guy in the studio, right? Like they should actually pay attention to what you have to say.
I just need to get my kids' friends to think I'm cool, and I'll be all set.
It'll never happen. Never happen.
I know, right?
They don't care. They don't care anymore. So let's kind of jump in because, you've actually done these before. You've come to the Punk Rock Museum before. You've done guided tours. So let's kind of talk about your experience with that. But then what I want you to do is give me like a 1 or 2 word kind of hint or, teaser to kind of describe maybe a can't miss story that you might tell while you're actually doing a tour there.
Can't miss story. There's a number of them, I think. I'll just say the word fear. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, so it could be the band. It could be just like your worst nightmare, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, or maybe both.
All right.
Maybe both.
Yeah, and how's your experiences been with doing these? Because I think you've done at least one round of them before, right?
No, gosh, I think I lost count. I think this is my 6th time coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do multiple guided tours when I'm there. So I don't know how many now, probably 60, 70, 80 that I've gone through the museum. It was daunting at first when I first walked in there. I really didn't know what to expect. I'd seen a couple pictures online, but I kind of wanted to experience it myself. And I went in with a notebook thinking, I'll take notes, go back to the hotel. I got there a day early. I'm going to plan this thing. Right. Yep. And I was just overwhelmed from the moment I walked in. I didn't know where to begin writing, and I just had to kind of wing it. And I was pretty nervous, because I never thought of myself as a tour guide at a museum in Las Vegas. So it's been everything that I didn't think it was going to be, everything, and I mean that in the most sincere way. It's brought me even closer to the fans in a cool way. And, everybody that I've met, I tell them that I get just as much, I think, out of it as they do. I enjoy hearing their stories too, because, I lived that era like most people did. I was a fan too. I wasn't just in a band. I loved all the bands that we all love. So I like to hear the stories as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've noticed is that you go through like exactly what you're saying. The first time I went to the Punk Rock Museum, I was like, I don't even know where to start to look. Like I just, some of the big posters, some of the big like, murals or something like that, or if they got like a, an outfit or something hanging up, like you see those, but then you look closer and you're like, there's like earrings from someplace, or this stud from someplace, and you're like, oh man, there's like little things hidden everywhere. There's stickers from bands everywhere, and you see flyers and all this stuff, and you're like, oh my god, it's like so crazy how much stuff they've actually got in there. And they've got a new No Effects exhibit that they're going to be doing. I think it starts next week.
Yep.
Obviously when this comes out, it already have opened, but obviously when you're there, that I believe that display will still be there. And I mean, you've actually got, and I'll get to the story in a little bit because Vinny actually, well, you know what? Let's just jump into it. But Vinny was actually obviously your former drummer, longtime friend, former drummer Vinny Fiorello. I spoke to him on our podcast, I think like 2 years ago, maybe. And
Okay.
I think this was like for the 1 year anniversary or somewhere around that time of the Punk Rock Museum, maybe even the opening. And he said, you guys actually, the first time you guys kind of ever had any contact with Fat Mike was when you shopped your first album. I think it was your first or second album, maybe Pezcore, to Fat Records. And he said that Fat Mike's response was, don't quit your day jobs. So how does that kind of like make you feel like kind of coming full circle? And now, he's working with the board and Fat Mike and all that stuff on the museum. And you're kind of like this honored guest that comes there and does guided tours.
Yeah, it's wild. Those were crazy times. You got to think of how many cassettes and CDs and demos were coming across Mike's desk at that time in the mid '90s. So,
Yeah.
I'd like to think we got lost in the shuffle. I think that at the same time we were pretty ragtag back then, rough around the edges. The songs were still getting developed. We were still learning how to play. So.
Yeah.
Our first album to me is really a glorified demo that we pressed into a CD and called it our first record. So yeah, it's awesome to be, included, standing in company of a lot of my punk rock heroes. But I've always been a social guy. I like to talk. I'm a frontman of a band. That kind of makes sense. I like to, I like to hear stories, and every time I'm in there too, I'll see something. Last time I contacted the museum who puts all the guides together, Morat, he was telling me, he had come up. I'm like, has this been here? I'm pointing at whatever it was. He's like, that's been here since day one. And I just hadn't seen it. I had walked by it 100 times, but there's just so many relics and things in that place that it's easy to miss something. And they turn things in and out, and they're constantly changing things around. So,
yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the cool thing. It's not like the Smithsonian that has like the Apollo landing thing there forever or whatever. They actually have interchangeable stuff, and they still have the Pennywise Garage. They've got the the place where you can play other people's punk legends and rock musician legends gear and stuff like that, which is also cool. So it's an interactive museum. You can get married. Have you ever thought about being an officiant at a wedding, or have you done that yet?
No, I have not done that. I have witnessed a couple there. I saw Fat Mike renew wedding vows for a couple up there, and
Nice.
pretty cool.
I want to bring up, obviously now you're doing a podcast. Chris DeMakes a podcast, which is a clever name, obviously very very fitting for your name. And I think you're a great person to kind of be a podcast host, because you do, like you mentioned, you're very social, you like to talk, you have a pretty positive attitude, which means you have a lot of friends in the music industry and you have great conversations. A person I kind of, I know you're pretty good friends with this person as well. Kind of, I think of you guys kind of like almost as brothers, like Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup.
Yeah.
And you, like you guys, everybody, you have a good relationship with everybody because you just have this positive attitude. Do you think that like that outlook, seems to help shape your conversations, make friends in the industry, help you get successful? And then on the flip side, like, do you ever feel like you have to kind of try to be a little bit more controversial, or you feel like maybe you should be more controversial just so like the engagement goes up on these episodes? Or is that just like you leave that to the trolls and bots?
That's funny you say that. I've never dropped a hell or a damn or a shit or an F-bomb on my show.
Right now on my show you're going to do it, but yeah.
Am I allowed?
Of course. It's the internet, man. You can do whatever you want.
I'll keep it clean. No.
No.
From the get-go, and we're on our 6th year now of the show. From the get-go, it was, I want to have a topic, which is songwriting. So each week I bring a guest on to break down one of their iconic songs of their career. I wanted to have that, and I wanted it to be if a 73-year-old guy from the middle of Kansas wanted to tune in and listen, that he could listen and not be offended by 8th grade dick jokes, which if you want to go to hear me tell those, I'll tell them at Less Than Jake shows probably till the day I'm dead. But, I definitely see the humor in life and don't take much seriously. But with this and with talking about music, I often wondered what I would have done had I been a musician. I always joked I probably would have sold insurance like my grandfather, or did something like that. But
Yeah.
truthfully, I would have loved to have been like a Dick Clark or one of those guys. Like, I just love music. Maybe would have been a disc jockey, or I don't know, went that route or something. So I enjoy talking about music and nerding out on it, just like people like nerding out about sports or comic books, Comic Cons, and different things like that.
Yeah, and I think for anybody who's, under 40, Dick Clark wasn't just the New Year's Eve guys, and if you're even younger than that, that was Seacrest, who Seacrest took it over from. But he did American Bandstand, I'm pretty sure, from the 70s and before that. So he was quite into music and all that stuff. And yeah, that's before.
Well, him, and you had Casey Kasem back then, and getting later guys like Eddie Trunk, who were in the metal scene and whatnot. And I would have been one of those guys. Maybe not as big as Dick Clark or Casey Kasem, but I would have been someone floating along, doing my thing. In terms of what you had mentioned about being controversial, our bands never tried to do that. Our lyrics were always, socially conscious. We wrote about experiences and whatnot. Vinny was our primary lyricist for his time in the band. And, we've kind of continued that route. We've never been political, so to speak, and trying to do that. So that hasn't been too difficult. And no, I don't want my podcast to take off because of a controversy. Although if the money started rolling, we'll see.
Yeah, it's actually one of the things I've asked, because I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people online, I think through some of the lyrics and the way you guys act, I think they can kind of tell maybe how you lean in certain conversations about politics. I mean, politics are one of the most divisive things in our country right now, and especially, it's been that way since, JFK got shot, basically. No one really likes the presidents anymore. Everybody hates the other people who vote for them. So it's quite a divisive thing. But I think that's kind of where you guys have never really tried to dig in and say, look, even as a ska punk band, we're not trying to say we hate such and such people. We are trying to divide people. You might have conversations about the government or something like that, but it's not saying like this party versus that party. It might be just government in general. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing, because obviously you dodge some bullets with like dividing your fan base, which I think is good, because, coming from Florida, there is kind of a wide range of politics in Florida, but then as you go and move elsewhere, you kind of see that as well. But do you guys kind of ever think like maybe you need to voice your opinion, or is this just something that you kind of want to stay out and just stick to the music that makes people feel good for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, just personally, I can't speak for anybody else in my band. I just, you want to get me to leave a party, start talking about politics or the government or who you voted for, I'll be out of there very quickly. I just, there's certain people that say that you're part of the problem if you turn a blind eye, if you refuse to, stand up for what's right. And I can sleep at night. I feel I stand up for what's right. Certainly trying to teach my children what's right and what's wrong. Just love thy next human being. How hard is it? And I think that's been lost. We celebrate the death of certain people, and we mourn the death of others, but they're all United States citizens. Yeah. So it's very, very sad what I've seen. Things happen.
Yeah, I mean, in kindergarten, we're told the golden rule of treat others like you want to be treated, and it seems like as soon as you graduate high school, that all goes out the window.
Yeah, I just try my best to fill my days with as much positivity as I can. There's enough negative. Negative. Just start scrolling on your phone. You'll find it within 2.2 milliseconds.
One thing that Less Than Jake and you guys obviously have done for, like I said, 30 plus years now is you guys, bands like MXPX, Blink-182, Real Big Fish, you kind of took that punk ethos and punk fandom and you expanded it out to non-hardcore punk fans, suburban kids. I grew up a punk fan. Like I was pretty poor when I grew up, but like I lived in a kind of like a middle income kind of neighborhood and area in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. And I always felt like, punk, we can't call ourselves punk. We can't be punk. Like, I like listening to Rancid, but every time I put on a Rancid, everybody make fun of me like, oh, you're not punk like Rancid. I'm like, no, well, no shit. I'm not punk like, Tim Armstrong. I'm not out here like wearing leather jackets and stuff, but I can still enjoy the music and enjoy the kind of, what they're saying and the message and all that stuff and the culture. But then it seemed like all of a sudden, punk became really big. Obviously Green Day was still on that, harder core at the time in the early 90s. But then like you guys and everybody else came out, and it was like, yeah, like, people who wear, cargo shorts and flip-flops can be punk now. And it was like totally different. So, you guys kind of widened that punk circle out. So did it ever feel like, you were kind of helping fans join the team, so to speak?
Oh, I don't know. We were just, like I said, we were fans ourselves. We were nerdy kids. We were wearing the same band shirts and spiking our hair the same and coloring it and
frosting tips.
We were just kind of doing our thing, and we knew we were, middle class suburban knucklehead kids that were trying to find our way too. We certainly thought we had the answers, but none of us did, as we all know now. You're just flying by the seat of your pants. But that scene, looking back, it gave me everything that I have today. Every one of those backyard parties and those long van rides and meeting those people along the way. And, to our credit, we were always, as hospitable as we could be. We remembered that kid that put on that first Basement show in Jersey. We still see him, he still comes to the show, and we remember his name and try to include people. I think that, isn't that what everybody wants is to be listened to? Yeah. To be acknowledged. Nobody likes rejection. That's nothing. You could be the most hardened guy. Oh, I don't care what they think about me. Yeah, you do. Like deep down, it's very difficult to develop skin that nobody can get through.
Yeah, I think it's very, very much an inclusive scene, and the more you can expand it, obviously, I think that's why it did so well in the late 90s and mid 90s, is because it wasn't defined to a specific, inner city like culture or anything like that. It now started growing.
Well, our band kind of, we transcended having to be on MTV or having to be on the radio. Certainly there were the bands that did, Green Day, no doubt, Blink, Sublime, but, there's only so many of those bands that can exist. Yeah. And then you have all the rest of the bands, and then you have all the other bands, your garage bands and your bands that nobody's ever heard of, or they never play a show. So many musicians, and we're kind of huddling here, and we've had the best of every world. We've gotten to open huge stadium shows and huge festival shows and play with all of our heroes. And I always make the joke. I've said it probably so many times. I remember specifically playing a festival in Switzerland, 60,000 people, main stage, going nuts. And the very next day, I'm playing to 600 kids at a squat in Italy. And to me, it shows a show, And I think that that's what's always helped our band, is having that that humility of, I'm a working class musician. It's cool. I live my dreams, but perception's everything. I have friends that think my band is as big as Green Day. Yeah. We're not. Yeah. But
yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, not the same. But you guys obviously did, two of your albums.
Their jet's a little bit nicer than my jet.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, two of your albums were on Capitol Records. They did quite well. I mean, in terms of like a band that's not on the radio or on MTV and all that stuff. And I mean, you've had a lot of success over the years, and you've had people that stay with you. And you're one of these bands that, people don't just jump off. Like, you guys have had new releases, like you had like Uncharted, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you've had this kind of long course of making music, and it's been good. Like, you actually still make good music. Like Uncharted, like I think there's 7 songs on there. I'm like 7 bangers on that album. And it's an EP. I mean, but like, that's like, for some reason, I think some of those songs are like older songs, and I don't think they are, but I'm like, they're brand new songs, but like they feel like they're 2010 Less Than Jake or 2000 Less Than Jake. And it's like, these are just really good songs. And you guys have been able to do that. So like, how do you guys look at your kind of, legacy and your tenure, I guess, in your career and say, we can not just keep making good music, but like fans still stick with us. I mean, you guys never, like I said, you kind of had some sort of, maybe like boy band status for a little while, like an underground style, like you're headlining Warped Tours and stuff like that. But like, you were never Blink, you were never Green Day. It wasn't like that level, right? But how did you maintain that all this time?
Well, that I think by all the things, the after mentioned things I was saying, we never had the ego of like, oh, we have to, be this band and force ourselves into a box. We kept playing, and one tour led to the next, and we had fans that just were really loyal. Yeah. I know there's bands out there that sold millions of records, that were an arena band at one time, and they aren't worth a quarter of the tickets that my band has today. They didn't play as many shows as we did. They didn't remember the kid that put on the first show at the Firehouse and outside of Seattle. There's something to be said about that. And we built a collection of songs that resonated with people. And now we have the passage of years and time and memories that people now are passing down to their children and to their grandchildren that they're bringing to the shows. Yeah. And that passage of time is huge. I loved, Metallica in the mid to late 80s, Master of Puppets. Absolutely adored it. But the appreciation for that record now and the memories, I have 40 years of memories with that record. It means so much more. And that's kind of what's happened with our band. Those memories have piled on every night. We'll come out and meet the fans. It's like, dude, the first time I saw you, Warped Tour 98, my bro and I got wasted. And they go through the whole story. And then you meet we've met couples that'll tell you that we were at a party one night and we started, doing it. And on the radio, one of your songs came on. And the DJ said it was Less Than Jake. We've heard story, and you're sitting there going, "Are you serious?" Like those types of memories, and that can only happen with what I call the passage of time. Yeah. You're seeing it with bands, not just from our era, but bands, 25 years ago, they were huge, but Metallica wasn't going to go out on a stadium tour. Yeah. Not enough passage of time had happened with them. So with us, it's just like the gift that keeps on giving. Yeah.
And it's funny because the story that you just said, basically, the first time I saw you was at Warped Tour in 98. I think that's roughly about the first time I saw you guys. It was on a Warped Tour. Me and my buddies were probably wasted, probably about 18 or 17 at the time. But yeah, I mean, that's a pretty common story. Like, I lived in the Midwest, in Mandan, North Dakota, just a suburb of Bismarck. Nobody ever came to North Dakota. So we had to go to Minnesota, Wisconsin, South Dakota, somewhere else. So we had to drive. It had to be like a whole thing. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like I think for most people who aren't living on a coast, right, East or West Coast, like they have to see you at a festival or maybe a co-headlining tour with another somewhat big band at the time. But yeah, I mean, that's why I like rock music so much. I grew up loving rock music and punk music, and probably the same with you is like, you can point to a time when a song played, like you can listen to it now and then remember a specific time 25 years ago and be like, oh man, that was way too much fun. Like we had a good time and that song happened to be on for that reason or whatever. And you can remember almost vividly how that works.
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy too. I was at the When We Were Young festival last year, and I had done some. I was out there doing the guided tours, and I went to one night. I wanted to see Weezer and Blink. My tours had gotten done, and I just got there right as Weezer was going on. It was just amazing. Like the first 8 songs were just radio hit, radio hit, radio hit, radio hit. All from that sweet spot, like, 94 to 2001 for those guys. And the whole place was just electric because all those memories came alive. It's huge, especially when you see it from those radio bands, how many lives they connected to, and then the branches of the tree just below that are a band like us, that we're so fortunate to be able to have songs that resonated with people. We worked our tails off, but we didn't have that exposure. So to have, be this far into our career and have people still care about us is mind-boggling and awesome.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that it would have ever changed? Like, I don't know, like exactly like your guys' kind of like geographic locations throughout the years, but did you ever have to move to California? Did you feel like maybe if you did move to California a certain X year or something, maybe you would have got more and more popularity or more visibility at all?
Oh, I mean, the first 10 or 15 years of the band, we'd sit down for interviews everywhere. It's like, so tell us about the scene in Orange County or Southern California. It's like, we're not from there. And then it's like, okay. You're from White Trash, California. You're from Florida. Oh, okay. Yeah. So
White Trash, California. I like that.
Yeah. So we basically just, first of all, we saw a lot of our friends fall into that trap. A couple Florida bands in particular that moved out to California to kind of be out there in the hubbub and rub elbows and whatnot. And they were back within a couple years. It's expensive to live out there. It's always been expensive to live out there. For us, part of our, I think, resilience and part of the reason that we fought so hard is that we were underdogs. We weren't in the, there's a little bit of a good old boy club in California or wherever within scenes. Everyone knows everybody. This guy went to high school with that guy. And, so we had to fight to get on bills and to get noticed. We were just that band from Florida for a long time. And I think that's what, sometimes you gotta, I don't know, for us kind of be the underdog, and that kind of fed us, so to speak.
Nice. A little chip on the shoulder always helps.
Yeah, I think it was a healthy chip.
Speaking of Florida and Gainesville, that's obviously where you guys kind of came up and started becoming, less than Jake. I'm going to get some recommendations from you before we get off, and I appreciate all the time you've shared with us so far to this point. But, I know some of the Gainesville music scene famous acts like Tom Petty, Against Me, Hot Water Music. But who would you say is probably like your favorite band, either, outside of those ones, or maybe not just in Gainesville, but from the state of Florida? Kind of give some home state love or hometown love to a band.
Oh, geez. Well, there's a band from Miami, if you haven't heard of them, called Quit. They were around in the early 90s. You can find them online. They have a record called Earlier Thoughts. Those guys are out making music again. Against All Authority from Miami. We recently did some shows with those guys again. They're dear friends of ours. And you mentioned a couple. Against Me, Hot Water Music. Grew up with those cast of characters in Gainesville. And in fact, I'm going to see Hot Water's drummer George very soon, because Less Than Jake's going to go over and play some UK shows with Bouncing Souls, and George is playing drums for Bouncing Souls as well as Hot Water Music now. So, nice. Yeah, as far as Florida goes, those are my shout outs.
Nice. And let's talk about an up and coming band that maybe you feel should be more well known than they are. Maybe, give them that, bump that you might not have ever got when you were kind of coming up. Who do you see as an up and coming band that needs more recognition?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you would call them up and coming necessarily. They've done quite well for themselves over in the UK. They've done some things in the United States, but there's a band called the Barstool Preachers that they're going to open the next Less Than Jake UK Winter Circus Tour coming up, the one I was just talking about with Bouncing Souls, Less Than Jake, Aquabats, and Barstool Preachers. They have a new record coming out, and they have a single that I just broke down with their singer this morning. It's called Pick a Side, and the song is just fantastic. It's awesome. It's like a party. The production's great. So check out the Barstool Preachers.
Fortunately, you actually kind of came up in the 90s, which looking back seemed to be like the heyday of music, where like it's kind of the last hurrah for record labels and, bands to get signed and actually make some money. And even if you're not signed, you can still make some money. And now it's kind of like, if you're in a band and you're just starting, good luck. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I heard guys when I was 18, 19 years old that were my age now that, in the clubs, monitor guys and stuff that, cigarette dangling out of their mouth that would be complaining, the no bands do 4 sets a night anymore. You can't find a good cover band, because you had these young punks coming in and going, and then they'd look at you. The first thing they'd say is, "Where's your PA?" You'd be like, "What are you talking about? You don't have a PA? How are you a real band? Real bands carry their own PA and their own lights." And we're like, what are you talking about? So, the blueprint's constantly changing, man. I mean, when we started, it was cassettes. If you had a CD, you were a real band. You were like, a superstar if you had a CD. And then at some point it became a little cheaper. It's like, wow, that band's got a CD. Maybe we could do that. And, from the CD, it went to the MP3, and then it went to this, and it went to that, and to streaming. So it's constantly evolving. Sometimes I feel like I'm a dinosaur and I'm trying my best to catch up. And other times I feel like I'm way ahead of the curve with people my age, and just trying my best to stay up with it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk real quick, because obviously Les and Jake did have, the latest album, EP, Uncharted. Just like I said, absolute bangers on that album. Like, how do you guys, go into recording these days? Is it something like you're like, hey, I've got some songs, let's go record them? Or is it like you intentionally have to kind of come together? And then like, is it kind of a different, like, because in the 90s it was probably, write, record, tour, release, tour, and then repeat, right? But is it, obviously you guys have families, got other stuff going on. What's kind of your
process? Yeah, I think that again that there's you have to make time and a commitment for whatever you do in life, and it's going to take to the wayside of other things. You're right. When you're first starting out, all you have is each other. Like maybe one of us had a girlfriend or two of us, and it was all about the music and all about the next gig. And, now, it's kind of like all the above. Someone will be like, we got these festivals coming up, or I got this idea, or this label contacted us. They want us to put out a 7-inch with them. Oh, cool. We should record some songs. And, at that point, okay, let's start getting some ideas together. And you just put your thinking cap back on. I mean, I've got a hard drive over here with hundreds of demo ideas and shells and things, and I'll revisit them sometimes and just kind of pick through that a little bit, or start from scratch. Sometimes something will get you, pique your curiosity. So we're always writing. There's always songs, but I think it's really about it's the commitment of it, and that's, as you get older, it's tough. You said families, all that comes into play, and we're kind of all spread out. So I'd like to think at least the last couple of years we've been pretty conscious of wanting to keep to that commitment, because it's important to us. We know, or I know, that our band could exist till our end at this point by the songs that we already have, and that's a blessing. We don't have to record another thing, but we enjoy recording music. We enjoy writing.
Yeah, I think it was Oasis, Liam Gallagher or Noel Gallagher, one of them said, like, why would we write new music? Our old music is so good. That's the only thing people want to hear anyway. So why would we record new music? I'm like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. Like, are you or are you not a musician? Like, I don't care that, like, you say that, but at the same time, like you have no desire to record or write new music. Like, that's crazy to me.
Well, a lot of these guys, let's just take Oasis. Let's say they took a year to write a record, and 6 months of that was spending money for a studio somewhere. And out of those 6 months, they actually worked for 3 months. Okay. But it was a grueling 3 months when they were there. They put their heart and soul into this product, and people don't care because it's never going to compare to Wonderwall.
Yeah.
You could think like that. Cool. I don't know if I could write a song that would ever have the impact of the stuff we did in the 90s, because I can't compete with those memories.
Yeah.
I'll always go back to the memories and the passage of time. Nobody can compete with that. If the Rolling Stones can't, there it is.
Well, and yeah, I think that's how you determine, like that's how most people determine if an album is really good, because is it still good 10, 20, 30 years later? And then, what I always look at, because I'm always looking for new music. I loved Uncharted. I thought it was literally one of your guys' best albums. Like I might say it's like in my opinion, and I love all your guys' albums. I would say maybe Hello Rockview and Borders and Boundaries, like 1 and 2, and then maybe Uncharted, like right there, like Silver Linings. And stuff
thanks.
There. Like there's you have so many good albums. Like it's hard to like distinguish. Like if you put them side by side, you're not going to think that there was 30 years between those albums or anything. You think these guys wrote all these albums in 5 years because they all sound incredible. They're all kind of consistent. So I think it is one of those things that like as a fan or as a fandom, people have to like hate the newest album just because it's not as good as the first album that they ever heard or their favorite album of the band, right? But it's like, honestly, like listen to this. Like I almost started our interview with hello, 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 hello. Like, because I'm like, that I wake up in the morning and that song is still stuck in my head. And I'm like, it's like a new song. Like I might be one of the few people who listen to new music as much as I do old music. And like you said, like you put on Master of Puppets. I'm like, I put on the Blue Album by Weezer and I'm like, man, it doesn't feel the same as it used to. It inspires memories. It feels like I'm too old to listen to this music sometimes, though, because it's like it is that old. It's still a great album, but I feel like as a person, maybe I'm too old for this now. That's why I like to find the new music and, lots of bands from my youth, the Toadies, you guys, Rancid, whoever, like they release new music and I'm still listening to it and going, it's just as good, but it's not going to get nearly the fandom or credit or, critical, acclaim that those other albums got because it's not getting the massive popularity visibility as before, because unfortunately that's just the industry we're in. But, kudos to you guys for still making absolutely great music at this point.
Well, thank you. Trying our best.
Yeah. So I have one last question before we go, and then we'll talk about kind of what you have coming up. Obviously, you've got a lot. You always have a lot on your plate, so we'll talk about that. And we've kind of sprinkled it here and there. But my last question I like to ask people, and other musicians have asked me to keep asking this of everyone, is it's the Mount Rushmore question. If you had a Mount Rushmore of musicians that are either influential or what you would consider the greatest musicians, who would you put on there? And they don't have to be, they don't have to make a band together. It could be 4 guitarists, 4 singers, 4 drummers. It doesn't matter. But who would you put on your Mount Rushmore of musicians?
Wow. Today, on the drums, Keith Moon from The Who.
Nice.
On guitar, today we'll go Randy Rhoads from Ozzy's band.
Okay.
And on the bass, we'll go Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath.
Okay. Who's
and then
this band?
we're gonna have a vocalist. We're gonna have a vocalist for this made-up band. Today we'll go with who are we gonna go with? Let's go with Ronnie James Dio. We'll keep it kind of Black Sabbath centric.
Keeping it metal. I like it. Nice. Very cool. So obviously, again, thank you so much for being here. I want you to take just a quick minute, shout out. I know you have a lot of things going on. Probably want to plug the 25th anniversary of Borders and Boundaries. I believe that's coming out on Fat Records very soon. Obviously, the guided tours the Punk Rock Museum, but please let us know and let everybody else know what you got going on.
Yeah, I got that UK tour coming up. You can find tickets at lessthanjake.com, Us Bouncing Souls, Aquabats, and the Barstool Preachers. Got a bunch of stuff coming up this summer that's getting finalized now. We're going to be working on some new music. We have some new songs coming out. I'm still hosting Chris DeMakes, the podcast, the weekly songwriting podcast that hopefully you all know and love. That's right.
Hopefully you don't get replaced, obviously.
Yes. And so, yeah, podcast is good in its 6th season, going very, very well. And I'm coming back to the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, February 13th, Friday the 13th, Saturday, February 14th, and Sunday the 15th. I'll be giving 2 guided tours a day. You can get your tickets at thepunkrockmuseum.com. And I want to thank everybody out there for caring about me and my band, and come out to Vegas to the museum and come say hi. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Maybe hide your girlfriend, wife, or whatever from Chris, because he might, he's just a dreamboat. I put that on our social media. I said,
yeah,
why not take your significant other to the Punk Rock Museum?
I'll make sure I have the pantyhose over my head so I look better.
That's the show for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you learned anything or liked what you heard on the show today, please show us some support and subscribe to this channel and like, comment, and share this video with a friend or put it up on social media. I hate to keep asking, but without those small actions, the YouTube bots pretty much ignore this channel. Putting these videos out is a lot of work, and if you want to show your appreciation, please consider purchasing some of our musical accessories or merch from our store at poweredbyrock.com. You can read our blog and follow us in the links below as well. Those are the plugs, and that's all I have. I'll see you soon for the next episode. Until then, rock on.